Alrighty guys, it is Quaman here today, and I'm bringing you another Dragon Ball discussion about Dragon Ball Super and the Tournament of Power. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. And for those of you who have not caught up to Dragon Ball Super episode 126, I wanted to let you know that this video will contain spoilers about episode 126 and all of the episodes leading up to 126. So if you are not caught up with Dragon Ball Super, I suggest you tune off now because this video will contain major spoilers. So now that we got the spoiler out of the way, let's get straight into this actual discussion where I want to talk to you guys about Jiren. So let's break the ice here, guys. It's pretty obvious to a lot of Dragon Ball fans that Jiren has little to no personality in the Tournament of Power, and it's so much so to the point where a lot of Dragon Ball fans have kind of created a meme out of Jiren where he's essentially this silent mute that has this Chuck Norris vibe to him, as I've mentioned before. And as you're looking at the title and the image that I'm playing right now for you guys in this video, Jiren actually smiled for the first time in episode 126, and if he smiled before that, feel free to correct me in the comment section because I did not find any images or clips of Jiren smiling beforehand. And that one smile that Jiren actually had in episode 126 actually has a much deeper meaning to this, as I will catapult this conversation into a deeper meaning of Jiren demonstrating selfishness throughout the Tournament of Power. So without further ado, let's go through the history of all of the selfish acts that Jiren has actually had throughout the Tournament of Power leading up to episode 126. So the first thing we actually have to talk about, guys, is actually dealing with the most recent thing in 126 itself. And this is the fact that right after Toppo fought against Vegeta, and Vegeta used his final atonement, final explosion attack where he powered up into this Super Saiyan Blue Beyond and knocked Toppo out of the Tournament of Power, we see that Jiren speaks to Dispo and Toppo and says that he expected more from them. So, looking at it right here, Jiren just said to his two strongest teammates that he expected more out of them, and he's looking down at them even though these are the two comrades that has fought with him throughout this entire bout, and the two guys who were a line of defense for Universe 11 itself. And we see that after they actually lose, Jiren is smiling and he actually has a lot of excitement to fight against four characters at once. So obviously we're seeing a level of selfishness here where Jiren is actually happy to take on more characters when the odds are actually stacked against him to test out his own power and might, which is one of the key things that we could obviously say about Jiren's selfishness. And if we were to compare the way that Jiren interacts with Toppo and Dispo to the other characters on his own team, I noticed something interesting here. It seems like Jiren only really interacts with Dispo and Toppo, and I think that there's one thing that you can use to actually accredit this to Jiren's personality, and this would be the fact that maybe it's just the simple fact that Dispo and Toppo were the only survivors from Universe 11 as of the most recent episode of Dragon Ball Super, so Jiren really didn't have anybody else to talk to. But I did find it interesting that it seems like in the whole power scaling hierarchy that Jiren would always talk to the two strongest characters as opposed to everybody else. But like I said before, that could be attributed to the fact that everybody else was eliminated beforehand. And I'm going to talk more specifically about the Pride Troopers later on and how Jiren actually treats them specifically. But if we go into something else dealing with a specific moment of Jiren demonstrating a level of selfishness, it would be when he was initially fighting Goku. So, when we see Jiren fighting against Goku, we see a moment in which he's telling Toppo specifically that he does not want him to get involved while he fights against Goku. So here we have another moment where Jiren specifically puts himself into harm's way because he didn't know exactly how strong Goku was until Goku fully demonstrated his power, and Jiren stacked the odds on himself in order to test himself against Goku because he wants to put it all on his own shoulders to test himself without really caring about the fate of Universe 11 itself. And if you want to also talk about characters that Jiren has interacted with more specifically, The only character that it seems like Jiren has a level of respect for would be Vermouth, and obviously it's heavily implied that Vermouth is the one who trained Jiren, because Jiren obviously has a power above mortals in a similar fashion to the way that Makurita trained Toppo to access that level of god ability. And obviously if Jiren is a lot stronger than Toppo, and it's shown throughout the series that he trained with Vermouth to get that level of power, then Jiren is obviously essentially a prodigy within Universe 11, which would explain his relationship with Vermouth. And when he was actually interacting with Vermouth telepathically, Vermouth was telling him specifically, and you could call him Belmont or Vermouth, it really doesn't honestly matter, that it is time for him to fight against Goku. So this is telling us that Jiren was probably never even going to really acknowledge Goku as a strong fighter throughout the Tournament of Power had it not been for Vermouth actually telling him to do so. And he probably would have just spectated until the very end, where he was when he felt it was actually necessary for him to jump in and to use his abilities. So here we have another moment where Jiren's ego is so large that he probably would have never jumped into battle had it not been for Vermouth actually telling him to do so, and had it not been for his teammates being eliminated. And that leads me into another point, guys, because as we've seen from the ending of Dragon Ball Super episode 126, that Jiren has a lot more power in store than has actually been shown. And this is obvious because over the last 3 episodes he's been fighting Goku and Vegeta non-stop, and it seems like nothing has been happening, whereas with Dispo and Toppo versus the other characters from Universe 7, there's been a lot more action on that front. So essentially Jiren has been toying with Goku and Vegeta the entire time just to test himself out, so probably when his other teammates were in trouble and when they really needed him, he could actually put his power into fruition even with limited time left in the Tournament of Power. So here's another moment where Jiren is also stacking the odds against himself. But if we want to talk about another aspect of Jiren's selfishness, we have to talk about his lack of respect. So, other than Goku and Vegeta, there was a moment throughout the Tournament of Power where Jiren had absolutely no respect for any opponent in the Tournament of Power other than Goku. He didn't even respect Goku's power as an Ultra Instinct, and after the initial fight between Goku and Jiren, he chose to meditate by himself and to let Dispo and Toppo carry the front for Universe 11 while he was gathering up his own power, because he felt that everybody else in the Tournament of Power wasn't even worth his time. Now, keep this in mind, guys. We all understand that Jiren is a very powerful character, but even Jiren didn't know the true extent to everybody's full power capabilities, but his ego and his selfishness to fight only when he finds it necessary is so large that he doesn't even find it worth his time to even be jumping into battle. And this is very different from a lot of other characters that we've seen in Dragon Ball who are actually happy and eager to fight against characters who they don't know how strong they are, and a perfect example of this would be Goku. So obviously, looking at it from that point of view, Jiren is very selfish in terms of comparing himself to other characters throughout the Tournament of Power. And if I want to bring up another point about Jiren's selfishness, guys, we have to go to the Dragon Ball Super manga and compare that to the anime. So one thing that the anime heavily implies is that Toppo, Casserole, and Dispo kind of fight together with all of the Pride Troopers as a unit, but if you look at this from the manga, guys, it was shown that Jiren kind of goes off and fights the strongest criminals in Universe 11 all by himself. So we can obviously have a point here that even though he's a part of the Pride Troopers, Jiren kind of goes off and does his own thing. And you could even make a theory that one of the reasons why Jiren probably is a Pride Trooper in the first place is because he wants to test his power, and the only way to test his power would to be a part of an organization that actually has him always going up and fighting against powerful characters throughout Universe 11 itself. And you might also throw another theory into saying that maybe if Jiren was a bad guy, he could test himself against the good guys in the series. But obviously his ego took a big priority in always fighting solo instead of actually fighting with a joint unit where everybody else seems to have great chemistry when they fight together. And you know what's very weird to me, guys? When you compare the Pride Troopers to the Ginyu Force, we have a comparison where they both follow that whole Tokusentai Power Rangers theme in Japan, And the weird thing about it is that the Ginyu Force were a band of evil guys, whereas the Pride Troopers are good guys. And oddly enough, Captain Ginyu actually cared more about his Ginyu Force members when he heard that they were actually killed, as opposed to Jiren, who didn't even bother to help them out when they were in need. So in many ways, Captain Ginyu was actually less selfish to his own comrades than Jiren is to his own Pride Troopers, when you actually do a direct comparison there. So overall, guys, I think I've pretty much summed up how selfish Jiren has actually been throughout Dragon Ball Super. Let me know what you think in the comment section below as to his selfishness, and more or less, I also want to know what you guys think about Jiren's first smile in Dragon Ball Super, as this is probably the only time that we will ever see Jiren smile throughout this Tournament of Power, as his ego is really getting the best of him, and I ultimately think that that will be his downfall. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.